Hello, welcome to Kicking Kickstarter with me, Jekylls. I am here with Bianca Cheng Costanzo to talk about the Kickstarter project Bloom Blanket.
Hello.
Hello. So tell us a bit about the Bloom Blanket. How did the concept come to you?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I suppose throughout my life I've always been interested in origami, making different craft projects and fold. And at the same time, throughout university and school before that, there was this pervasive interest in math as well, and more complex digital forms. And I eventually studied software engineering, and I wanted to figure out how I could combine these quite quotidian and cozy things that were a bit silly, I suppose. So the Bloom blanket was inspired by the origami that I used to play with when I was a kid. And at the same time, I studied a lot of math in school. I was really interested, and still am, I suppose, in digital aesthetics that's very geometric and symmetrical as well. And I wanted to figure out how I could combine this like quite cozy, quotidian raw with my digital interest. And so I came up with this to do the first try, honestly.
What makes you interested in the maths and fashion and combining the two together? What is it that makes you want to blend the two together?
Nothing in particular. Just a few of the things that I personally like. So for me, it was quite natural to say, okay, well, I want combo address with everything I like in the same list, in the same project.
How did you start to get into the fashion world?
When I was a teenager, I would ask my mom to make dresses for me and copies of things. So say, yeah, this design would be really cool if it was red, and we put fabrics together, and this kind of fun stuff. I wasn't allowed to, buy anything super expensive, so we always had to make it, and that was doubly fun. That was better, actually.
The Bloom blanket itself is based on a sequence that you found. How hard was it to take the mathematic origami shape and make it into a fabric form that still retained its shape?
It was super hard. I first tried to do it quite literally. So I would sew almost exactly the origami pattern into the fabric, but it was way too complicated, and you couldn't really tell what was going on. All the fabric kind of blended into each other, didn't look good or make any sense. So I started to cut down more and more and started to simplify. So although Bloom was really inspired by this textilation that I love, that I show in the very beginning of the video on my Kickstarter project, it's just a series of really simple texture features so that it can look cohesive.
When you were going to trying to find manufacturers to help produce it to a wider scale, was it hard trying to find one that would take on your concept or work with you to help create it, or?
It's a funny story, actually. Since the project has become so popular in Kickstarter, a lot of people have been asking me, like, how do you know these things about manufacturing in Spain and et cetera, et cetera. But it turns out that I'm working with a friend of a friend who was the first person that I talked to about the project before I set out with the manufacturers. And I gave him a small sample that I had made and some paper cutouts of my ideas. And he was like, yeah, that's a great idea. I guess we'll think about it or something. And after like a few months actually of struggling with looking for manufacturers in Spain and then eventually actually in the UK, he came back to me and said, hey, we can do it.
All right, so it wasn't it wasn't too much of a struggle then trying to find the manufacturer.
was just good fortune. I don't know how it would have turned out if he didn't call me that day and say, all right, we'll do it.
The fabric you use to retain the shape is also quite a soft and rich fabric. Tell us about the fabric that you used to create the bloom blanket.
Yeah, it's super, super. The good thing, the soft part, is a big thing. Because when friends come over to my house, and they're like, yeah, I want to see the blanket now because it's so popular or whatever, they're always really surprised by how light it is. And that I really about. The story with the fabric is also, I guess, a random sort of fortuitous thing where I was the factory was in that I was looking around for different kinds of wool in Spain. My idea was to use a thick wool that was kind of one sheet. And I looked around and there wasn't anything that was particularly compelling, and it happened to be really close to Christmas when I went to see my parents in Rome, where I know where to go shopping, at least for fabric, a little bit. In part because of this fashion story of my mother who used to make dresses for me as a teenager. And so I went to one of the big shops and fell in love with this piece of wool cashmere. Promised myself that I'd only buy 1 meter, but just do a test because I hadn't found the wool that was convincing enough. But it was both so soft and so light that even though it's way more expensive than the other ones that I wanted, I had to keep it. I had to do it. I fell in love.
It's just too irresistible to pass up on.
It was, yeah. You know, when it's love, it's love.
Well, the blanket itself does look very nice and cozy as well. I'm quite surprised that it manages to retain its shape as well as it does, really, because it doesn't look like it ever really goes out of shape once, really.
It moves around a bit, but yeah, I'm surprised that it retained its shape as well. There was a lot of trial and error.
And how come you decided to go with Kickstarter for the bloom blanket?
So to make things more simple, I decided to form my company, my design firm, in the United States. So it's a United States company, and all the base is going on in there. And of the United States crowdfunding websites, I guess I immediately had to Kickstarter because it has some popularity, and I think people respect it a bit because they check their application, so you have to be approved to be allowed to post your project out, and so it kind of acts as a filter. And it turns out that the popularity of Kickstarter helped me a lot because I ended up on the newsletter, which was a big reason for the popularity of the project.
You said you started up the company in the States. How did you go about doing that?
Online. It was pretty simple. I just wanted to go for the easiest, the least overhead possible. So Delaware LLC, and I called an address in Delaware, and it's all set up.
When people fund your Kickstarter campaign, what are the different tiers that they can choose from?
Alright, I wish that I could have come up with more, but I wanted to keep the project simple. So I came up with a lowest tier, which is starting from $1 to whatever you want, which is just a thank you. And I put people's names on the website so that you can say, oh, here are all the backers of the people who made doing the competitions and do, which I really enjoyed that other Kickstarter campaigns that I've done. Have that, so I decided to do the same. And for $10, I will send you a postcard from Barcelona, which is a little bit funny because a lot of my friends from Barcelona have backed that. So I'm wondering if I should send it from somewhere more exotic. the version just for fun, which will be a handmade version of the blue blanket that I will customize and design myself for whoever wants it for $2,000.
And where can people go to find out more about yourself, your company, and Bloom Blanket?
There's quite a long bio of myself within the Kickstarter webpage, actually, which is a bit hidden, but I spent a while on it. Otherwise, you can go to bloomblanket.com.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bianca, for talking to us about your project Bloom Blanket on Kickstarter.
Thanks so much for your time. This was really lovely.